Kangaroo is a 1923 novel by D.H. Lawrence. It is set in Australia. Kangaroo is an account of a visit to New South Wales by an English writer named Richard Lovat Somers and his German wife Harriet in the early 1920s. This appears to be semi-autobiographical, based on a 3-month visit to Australia by Lawrence and his wife Frieda, in 1922. The novel includes a chapter, Nightmare, describing the Somers' experiences in wartime St. Ives, Cornwall. Vivid descriptions of the Australian landscape. And Richard Somers' skeptical reflections on fringe politics in Sydney. Ultimately, after being initially somewhat drawn to the digger movement led by Benjamin Cooley, Kangaroo, neither it nor the great general emotion of Kangaroo himself appealed to Somers. And in this the novel begins to reflect Lawrence's own experiences during World War I. On the other hand, Somers also rejects the socialism of Willie's truthers, which emphasizes generalized love. Australian journalist Robert Darroch, in several articles in the late 1970s, and a 1981 book entitled D.H. Lawrence in Australia, claimed that Lawrence based Kangaroo on real people and events he witnessed in Australia. The extent to which this is true remains a matter of controversy. Joseph Davis in D.H. Lawrence at Thirul, 1989, is sympathetic to the view that Kangaroo may be based on real events, but argues that it is impossible that Lawrence had time to meet clandestine political leaders in Sydney when he was too busy writing his novel in Thirul. Davis feels it is more likely to have been a local South Coast identity associated with Thirul, who would have provided some of the details of Lawrence's political plot. Kangaroo is the fictional nickname of one of Lawrence's characters, Benjamin Cooley, a prominent ex-soldier and lawyer, who is also the leader of a secretive fascist paramilitary organization, the Diggers Club. Cooley fascinates Somers, but he maintains his distance from the movement. It has been suggested by Darroch and others that Cooley was based on Major General Charles Rosenthal, a notable World War I leader and right-wing activist. It has been alleged that Rosenthal was involved with the Old Guard, a secret anti-communist militia. Similarly, according to Darroch, the character of Jack Calcott, who is the Somers' neighbor in Sydney and introduces Richard Somers to Cooley, may have been based on a controversial Australian military figure, Major John Scott, who was both an associate of Rosenthal and an Old Guard official. Another central character is Willie Struthers, a left-wing activist reputed to have been based partly on William C. Ebenhar, who made Lawrence's acquaintance in Western Australia. Analysis of the novel. This novel is from 1922 and it reflects the trauma of the time after World War I. Much of this trauma is personal, within. Big human events can cause questions, wondering how this can be avoided in the future and how is this global world going to get on. The reverberations of the war are also in the people in one way or another, their movements and desires. There is a bit of a meandering on the road plot to this novel, but it is mainly a 365-page journey into the interior of the Richard character. It's a story about how to deal with other humans. The plot is not the thing here. There is not much action. It feels like a pre-cinema worldview. Australia is the setting for a story constructed to explore all this internal work. The character, Kangaroo, is an Australian lawyer. He is also a wannabe dictator who has attracted a band of followers mostly made up veterans from the war in Europe who have not had that type of excitement and bonding since. A globe-hopping English writer Richard and his not-English wife Harriet land in Australia, and Richard is seduced into this right-wing oddball male scene through being rather reluctantly neighborly. There is also a left-wing working-class socialist movement. Yet a lot of the drama is the strange need of this Kangaroo man to be loved and followed. Kangaroo is a nickname for the lawyer leader man. The socialists have a leader too, and there is a scene with him trying to recruit Richard as well because he is a writer of some note and renown, but he is nowhere near as grasping, needy, and ultimately grotesquely pathetic as Kangaroo. It shows the sick need of this type of narcissistic political, cult, or personal leader. All this is set up really to look into an individual's place among others personally and politically. It works very well that way. We follow Richard as he is being seduced into loving Kangaroo. The fascist impulse stands in. We feel the writer confronting these ideas within himself. He is a man open to ideas and faces the risk in that he could be swept away. Fear of that makes him perhaps rigidly non-committal. Open to ideas but rejecting all action options. Avoiding the associations and actions that can make the idea manifest. The novel is cogitation on these big waves of human political energy building up out of industrialization, socialism and fascism. Richard finds himself being pulled by both poles. The minimal suspense of the piece is in which will he choose. It might be useful for the reader to see this in context of 1922. Before the triumph of German fascism and the horrible results. Into and during World War II. And the Soviet Union was brand new. Everything was new and with a sweepingly rapid industrialization. We are at the edge and near the end of the Greater British Empire, but 20th century was still to come. Yet Richard doesn't want to choose, cannot choose. He does not trust this human, male, energy that tries to use grand ideas and romantic sentimentality to change the world. He distrusts this and feels silly when he notes it rising up in himself. But he wants connection to something. He craves it. He has a sort of idiosyncratic philosophical/spiritual point of view. If he and all could be more attentive to some natural force, a god in everything, maybe things could somehow set right. Otherwise the left and right are two sides of the same thing. It's not that stark. He does make a stand and chooses a side in a non-committal way. It would have been disappointing otherwise, and he makes the correct choice even if he isn't exactly joining up. After all, few really do. There is a long illuminating diversion into Richard and Harriet's experience in England during the war. This reflects the actual wartime experience of D.H. Lawrence. It is the outsider, the objector, dealing with a bonded unified nation's jingoistic environment. This sort of thing apparently never changes. On the personal level, the novel depicts a lot of loneliness and desire. There is a craving for male bonding, a real love, caring, and trust between males as is available sometimes between men and women. But Richard can't fit himself into any of that as much as he might want it or is interested in it. The whole construction of the settings for this male bonding do not work for him. He is simply not a team player up for any of these surface bonding programs that we make available. He doesn't want to be touched. Is that because he needs to be touched too much, if at all? He sees the limits and social dangers of any variance. It's as if the old type of male connection was removed in the construction of the commercial competitive world. The limits set in the bonding environments made available are not removed from the domination of a power-hungry dualist worldview. The business connections, military connections, sport fan bonding, all have a sort of ritual structure prohibiting spontaneity. He wants another sort of connection out of his general spiritual outlook. He wants the humans to feel the flow or energy from the earth and reconnect with them through that rather than pretending to be something separate. And there is really the only small hope for the redemption of humans. The notion is that this type of bonding could be more open. Not so much a dance of the restricted roles of mainstream male bonding, but that hazards opening to territory forbidden wherein. Of course, there is some hope and danger. There is mystery here. His notions are not exactly named. He calls part of it his dark god. But this is unseen and unnameable rather than dark equals evil. He embraces mystery over knowing, naming, and structure. Yet craves connection to the mysterious structure beyond intellectual and emotional decisions. A surrender that would not have to be made. Kangaroo offers a transparently artificial option for this. The novel could also be a warning about that type. The power-hungry eager to exploit this spirit, hope, love, and our need to belong. In a way, Richard is a sort of fugitive wandering to the next stop in a trip initiated by disgust with his own homeland. End of the analysis. Thank you.